We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina. So when President Donald Trump says that he doesn't need anything from Canada, that is not accurate at all. Canada supplies 90% of potash, 50% of aluminum, 30% of uranium to the United States. It's the #1 supplier in terms of a single country in the world. Once the bond between the United States and Canada was unbreakable, a golden friendship rooted in shared borders, common values, and economic trust. But in 2025, President Donald Trump took a blowtorch to that trust. In a moment that stunned allies and angered economists, he looked into the camera and said, We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. A single sentence, but an earthquake in diplomacy. This wasn't just bluster. It was a declaration of economic isolation. Trump wasn't simply turning away from Canada. He was insulting a nation that has for decades powered America's industries, secured its borders, and stood by its side. In every global conflict, he wasn't pushing back against unfair trade. He was attacking a partner that had always played by the rules. Now, let's be crystal clear. Canada isn't just a neighbor. It's the largest trading partner to many U.S. states, the #1 supplier of essential raw materials, and a trusted ally in defense and intelligence. When Trump says we don't need them, it's not just false, it's dangerous. His words may satisfy a crowd hungry for nationalism, but they betray the economic reality on the ground. Canada provides the US with 50% of its aluminum, 30% of its uranium, 25% of its steel materials that make up your car, your home, even the technology in your hands. Walking away from Canada isn't strength, it's self-harm. It's like cutting off your own oxygen tube and calling it bravery. Trump's statement was more than a soundbite, it was a policy shift. Since April 2nd, 2025, his administration has slapped harsh new tariffs not just on China or the EU, but also on Canada. He picked a fight where there was none. He isolated the US from a peaceful partner and triggered a wave of retaliatory boycotts north of the border. Canadian consumers began ditching US products. Canadian leaders started exploring closer ties with Europe and Asia and America. America started bleeding supply chains and jobs just moments after Trump dismissed Canada's importance. A sharp rebuttal came from an independent news outlet grounded in facts, not slogans. So when President Donald Trump says that he doesn't need anything from Canada, that maybe is not completely accurate. That is not accurate at all. And that goes beyond just critical minerals. We can talk about oil, and other commodities that the US desperately needs from Canada. But, when it comes to critical minerals, right now, for instance, there is a shortage of the rare earth elements, which are the ones that are used to make these permanent magnets. This isn't political spin. It's an economic reality. The United States has only 1.3% of the world's critical minerals. Canada, on the other hand, is overflowing with them, supplying 90% of potash rare earth elements, like tungsten gallium and germanium, and even uranium used in national defense. These aren't luxury items, they're the backbone of everything from smartphones to fighter jets. Canada even houses the largest refinery for germanium outside of China. It's not just a useful trading partner, it's a strategic lifeline. Without Canada, the US would be forced to depend on hostile or unstable nations for essential materials that power everything from electric cars to missile defense systems. And while Trump tries to play tough on the world stage, calling out other countries and waving the America First flag, he's actually leaving America last. Last in supply security, last in regional cooperation, and last in public benefit. His obsession with appearing strong has led him to reject logic, facts, and even long-standing friendships. What's worse is that Trump's decisions aren't just symbolic. They're felt in everyday life. Prices are rising, shortages are increasing. American companies are being choked by the very policies meant to protect them. You can't build cars without aluminum. You can't build fighter jets without rare earths. You can't power clean tech without nickel and cobalt. And you can't find those materials in sufficient quantities without Canada. The true cost of Trump's rhetoric isn't paid at the G7 summit or in press conferences. It's paid in the form of higher grocery bills, factory layoffs, and national security risks. It's paid by the very Americans he claims to champion. And it's not because Canada walked away, it's because Trump shoved them out the door. So here's the truth. This isn't just a trade war, it's a war against America's own industries, silently killing progress, technology, and national defense from the inside. While Donald Trump boasts about protecting US factories with tariffs, he's cutting off the very materials those factories need to survive. His reckless policies are not just aimed at adversaries, they've now targeted Canada, the most vital mineral supplier America has. Canada isn't just another country in the global mineral game, it's the country, a powerhouse hiding in plain sight. And yet Trump turned it into a target as he doubled down on his trade war. Canada kept supplying materials the US cannot function without. One journalist laid it out in black and white. This is not pocket change to the United States. It's the #1 supplier in terms of a single country in the world. Canada supplies 90% of potash, 50% of aluminum, 30% of uranium, 25% of steel to the United States. It's a major supplier of copper, niobium, which one of those more rare and specific minerals, nickel, and other things. And Canada also has some of the more, very rare stuff like germanium. These are the bricks of modern civilization, the bones of bridges, the skin of planes, the fuel for power, plants, and the spark behind innovation. Potash is essential for agriculture. Aluminum is used in everything from aircraft to soda cans. Uranium powers energy grids and defense systems. Steel runs through every inch of American infrastructure. Now, imagine shutting that down overnight. That's exactly what Trump's tariffs did. He tried to look strong, but ended up making the United States weaker than ever. Instead of negotiating smarter deals with Canada, he raised trade walls, believing the US could mine, refine, and supply all these elements on its own. But it can't. America doesn't have the resources, the refineries, or the infrastructure to match Canada's supply network, and building that from scratch would take decades and cost billions. This isn't theory. The consequences are already visible. Prices are rising, industries are slowing, and production lines are halting, all because critical minerals suddenly became political hostages. Look at what happened next. One of America's most iconic carmakers felt the direct impact of this disaster. Ford, a symbol of US strength and innovation, was forced to shut down production, where a Ford plant actually had to shut down in the US temporarily as a result of a shortage of critical minerals. Can you tell us about what happened there? Yeah, that's a story, and it's not just Ford. Toyota had the same problem, and some car makers in Europe are having the same problem. These are the rare earth elements that are used to make these permanent magnets, which are in a range of motors. Multiple motors are in a car from these tiny little things. They control your air conditioning system, the opening of the vents. They do a whole bunch of different things. This wasn't a strike, it wasn't a weather issue, it was a mineral shortage. A shortage caused by the very trade barriers that Trump himself put up. And it didn't stop with Ford, Toyota, too faced production delays. European car makers joined the list, and it's not just about cars. These same rare earth elements are used in military aircraft, guided missile systems, satellite networks, and semiconductors. In short, if you block the minerals, you block the future. America's national defense is now entangled in this economic mess. The F-35 fighter jet, one of the most advanced weapons ever built, requires rare earth magnets and alloys that Canada produces and refines. If those supplies stop, the jets stop. And if the jets stop, the US military is grounded. It's not just economic suicide anymore, it's national security negligence. Gallium, germanium, niobium, cobalt. These aren't just chemistry class terms, they are vital ingredients in your phone, your car, your AI chips, and your fighter jets. China has placed export restrictions on some of these, while Canada continues to supply them with transparency and trust. But Trump chose tariffs over trust, punishment over partnership. And while Canada remains open to dialogue, it is also looking eastward. It is signing new mineral supply deals with European and Asian buyers. If America loses its place in Canada's mineral chain, there may be no way back. Trump's mistake wasn't just starting this war, it was underestimating what he was breaking. He didn't just slap tariffs on metal, he slapped them on cooperation, trust, and 50 years of mutually beneficial trade. He handed economic opportunity to America's competitors while pushing away the one country that always stood ready to help. When world leaders gathered at the G7 summit in Alberta in 2025, the spotlight wasn't just on global issues.